spin the tires. Track's tough to predict, though. What happened?
Every week I'm heading off someplace to do an event around the country and sometimes even around the world. Most of my work keeps me within the bounds of people who are in network television or are in auto racing. And so when I get down to the Scottish Rite and we spend time together, I'm talking on one hand with a guy who's a lathe operator somewhere, this guy's a lawyer, that guy's the president of a corporation, this guy owns his own business, and so that creates a great cross-section for me to draw from. And it's all at the Scottish Rite, so it becomes, in many ways, a central meeting point of my family and of my brotherhood.
So what kind of a guy am I? I'm a dad. I'm a development officer at WDUQ. I'm a community volunteer. I'm a Freemason. I'm a Scottish Rite Mason. You're listening to WDUQ 90.5 FM, Pittsburgh. I'm somebody who cares about making my community a better place to live. I guess that's who I think I am, at least right now.
I spend a lot of time in the woods. I have a wonderful wife who's very understanding about that. Ooh. I spend a lot of time with my family, just, you know. I'm someone who, I guess, has a high energy level, but is down to earth, and I really enjoy helping other people. And it's very rewarding to sort of get them out of debt and then get them back on track. It's something I've really enjoyed doing over the years. There's a lot of rewards I've gotten from my professional career, but there's just something about being in an organization where I can get involved, I can help the organization. I do enjoy helping people, and that does feed my soul, but Masonry and Scottish Rite Masonry just adds another dimension to that.
My great consuming passion is how does the world come together to put its collective arm around children who have so very little, oftentimes have lost parents, and don't have the safety nets elsewhere around the world that we have in the West in places like the United States. How do we come together to say, you know, it is just no longer acceptable for 18,000 children to die every day of malnutrition, 1 every 5 seconds. You know, lives only take on meaning as we express them and experience them in terms of our associates. And if we carefully watch those around us, we can learn a lot. We can be encouraged and uplifted. I think the teachings, the basic principles of the Scottish Rite are really the most important principles of humanity.
This is big when you're small.
You be the desert, I'll be the storm, I'll be your Sunday best.
What appeals to me about Masons in general, just their willingness to be involved in the community, the generosity that they display in helping others, friends and family. It's made me a better individual by being around those individuals. My getting into Freemasonry was a sign of maturity. It was time to set a higher sense of morality for myself. Part of it is atoning for prior sins, a lifetime of prior sins.
I'll be the hero, I'll catch you when you fall, and I'll be big when you're small.
What we have here is a spectacular building indicating through architecture the stability of the organization behind it. You have a building saying, this is a successful organization, this is an organization that has been here a very long time and is going to be here well into the future. I'm a college professor, I hang out with other college professors, and it's so nice to come into the real world and be with people who share beliefs in things that I believe in. We come from all walks of life. We have a great broad cross-section of age, profession, politics, religion, skin color. We reach out across the community.
I want to learn more about what this discipline of Freemasonry has to offer me as a man, as a potential leader, and as a person who can shape my community and my family for the better. The support that I get from my family, and especially from Christina, my wife, is remarkable.
I love American history and the Founding Fathers, and didn't realize, as many people I don't think know, what a massive influence the principles of Freemasonry were on the founding of our country.
Benjamin Franklin was an ardent Freemason. He had a long Masonic career at a time when long Masonic careers were rare just by virtue of the brevity of human life at that time. And he achieved a great deal, not only for Masonry, but also for other people who were non-Masons, and for the United States in particular, but other countries as well.
The whole idea of becoming a better person, building yourself to be a better father, a better husband, a better member of your community is absolutely critical. I would say the other fantastic thing that I've seen from my husband about Freemasonry is that whole concept of brotherhood, you know. And we'll be riding in a cab in Jamaica, and he'll see a ring on the driver's finger, and he says, "Hello, brother," and right there's this bond, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful to see.
Where does the history of the Scottish Rite begin? Scotland, right? Wrong. The origins of Scottish Rite Freemasonry go back almost 300 years to London, England, when in the summer of 1717, 4 of the city's lodges banded together to form the Grand Lodge of England.
One of the most gung-ho of the brothers just happened to be, you guessed it, a Scotsman. His name was Andrew Michael Ramsay.
Ramsay left home for the bright lights of Paris and, tout de suite, got himself elected Grand Chancellor of one of the city's lodges. He was so devoted to the fraternité and so eloquent in his praise that he motivated his French brothers to create more than 1,000 degrees. Some of those degrees, perhaps in tribute to Ramsay, were called Écossais, or Scottish degrees. In the mid-1700s, Stephen Moran, a wine merchant from Bordeaux, spread word of the Scottish degrees all the way across the Atlantic to the West Indies. And in 1767, Moran authorized Henry Andrew Franklin to carry the degrees north to the colonies.
In 1801, Colonel John Mitchell joined with 10 other gentlemen to organize a Supreme Council in Charleston, South Carolina.
Meanwhile, in New York City, a brother named Antoine Bedeau was going around conferring all kinds of degrees. One small problem: Bedeau didn't have the authority to confer any degrees, at least not in New York. Neither did a brother named Joseph Surneau, but that didn't stop him either.
Colonel Mitchell was not amused. He ordered his subordinate, Emmanuel de la Mata, to sort things out. De la Mata decided in favor of Bedeau's group. It became the first Supreme Council for the Northern jurisdiction. Ever since then, the Rite has had both the Northern and the Southern jurisdiction.
The Supreme Council for the Northern jurisdiction got off to a slow start. Very slow. For 40 years, nothing much happened. During those lost years, a devoted brother, John James Joseph Gogas, almost single-handedly kept the Brotherhood alive. Then in 1860, as the Rite was just getting back on its feet, rivalry and jealousy threatened to knock the whole enterprise off its expanding backside. Sovereign Grand Commander Edward Asa Raymond wanted to keep the Brotherhood the way it had been for the last 40 years, small and sleepy. But one of his deputies, Killian Henry Van Rensselaer, had other ideas, and he wasn't one to hang around biding his time. Like a Masonic Johnny Appleseed, Rensselaer crisscrossed the northern jurisdiction, planting new lodges wherever he went. His activism made Rensselaer very popular with the new brothers, but not with the Grand Commander. When Rensselaer's supporters moved to elect their man to a powerful committee, Commander Raymond quickly gavelled the proceedings to a close. But in the end, he wasn't fast enough. The opposing faction booted him out of office and replaced him with, you guessed it, his nemesis, Ben Rensselaer. The squabbling continued for another 7 years, but eventually the warring factions made peace and reunited. For the next 60 years, with nary a ripple, the Council of the Northern Jurisdiction conducted business from its headquarters in New York City. But in the early 1920s, the council members decided it was time to make a move to the cradle of liberty, the Athens of America, the hub of the universe. In short, to Boston. For the next 45 years, the Boston headquarters were located in the city's downtown. Then in 1968, the council decided to move again, this time just across the Charles River and westward to Lexington, Massachusetts, where almost 200 years before, the venerable Minutemen had stood their ground against the British Redcoats.
Only 8 years later, as part of its bicentennial celebration of the country's birth, Scottish Rite opened the National Heritage Museum. It was a gift to the American people, a museum to open the minds of visitors to everything that makes Americans, well, American. And finally, in 2007, something happened that many doubters had doubted would ever happen. After more than 200 years, the northern and southern jurisdictions decided it was high time to hold their first joint session.
And so they did. In Washington, D.C., for 3 days, in the heat of late August, brothers from north and south hobnobbed, hung out, and viewed each other's rituals. And you know what? No one could figure out why they hadn't done it sooner. Yours fraternally. Central to Scottish Rite Masonry is the conferring of 29 degrees or lessons through a series of theatrical presentations. Each of the presentations is an allegory that represents the timeless values of this unique fraternity.
The Supreme Architect does not show any of us our personalized trip maps in advance. It is just a matter of faith. This journey of a lifetime is the only one you get to take, so you want to make sure that you make the most of it along the way.
The rituals give men tools with which to deal with their day-to-day life, so that when you are in a situation that calls for reverence, calls for understanding the greater powers around you, you can call upon your training from the Scottish Rite.
Most of the degree presentations are drawn from the Old Testament or from important events in American history. What do they teach? To be of service to our fellow man, to conduct our lives according to a strong sense of ethics, to serve our nation as good citizens, and to revere our God.
Freemasonry cannot enforce its ideals. We cannot compel our brethren to live in harmony with the lofty principles taught in our degrees. All we can do is entreat you. Nay, more, we challenge you.
The degree presentations date back to the plays staged by medieval craftsmen. In earlier days, the teachings would have been staged in small groups. But as technology advanced, the degree presentations became more sophisticated.
The Scottish Rite buildings had auditoriums and theaters in them, and very, very early on in this country, as it developed, they were putting on what really was frontier theater. The Scottish Rite would use special effects, sound effects, costumes, scenery.
So that the rituals were transformed from being purely verbal rituals to being theatrical presentations, using all of the new developments of the commercial theater to transfer the esoteric knowledge in a more effective way, so that the membership of the Scottish Rite skyrockets as these new technologies are being used between 1890 and 1920.
What is it like to be a part of a degree presentation?
Now, our journey can begin. Each time you add a degree, you become initiated into something else. That initiatic experience can provide you with energy that seems, at least to me, to be akin to an out-of-body experience. I honestly have felt at times like something else was driving me, that something had taken over, that I was not simply parroting back words that I had memorized.
Occasionally, a valley will use its theatrical talents to perform a play for the public.
This play is a chance for our friends and families to see what Scottish Rite is all about. I think that the audience will walk away being stunned with what they learn about Scottish Rite in general.
The guy I'm playing is named Carter Blair. He's a Confederate captain who's been captured by the Union Army. He's been mortally wounded, so he's spending his last few hours in a Union hospital tent. He was saved when he was captured by a Union Mason who saved his life. And he's realizing now that where brotherhood can transcend a war, it could really transcend almost all of the world's problems.
Over the years, the presentations have been updated to remain relevant to our modern lives, but their substance remains intact.
If you truly come and witness the degrees and take part in the experience of returning to the Scottish Rite and getting to know the men who are here, you will find they are, and truly, the movers and shakers of your community, of our society. They are living those ideals. They are teaching those ideals to each other. And that's what is so special in particular about the Scottish Rite.
Okay, so a little more stage presence, and let's do this first one with eye contact.
There are new ways of communicating, new ways of transferring knowledge.
Is the wire showing through?
But the brotherhood is the same brotherhood that was founded on Solomon's Temple.
Okay, so we're rolling. This is 2, anytime.
The temple in the heart of man is an unfinished temple. We are building it every day. We build it as we grow in moral insight and in strength of character. We build it as we broaden our sympathy and understanding to include men of every race and creed. We build it as we carry the inspirations from this hour of fellowship into the tasks of our everyday world.
Truth and justice, liberty and enlightenment, fraternity and philanthropy. For Scottish Rite Freemasons, these are the living ideas and ideals that stand the test of time and are always inspiring good men to become better men.
People are still asking the same questions they've been asking about who am I and what's my role in the world and what's my purpose in life.
There is a willingness on the part of the Scottish Rite to say these are ancient, timeless concepts of truth and liberty and battling in the face of adversity. But we're willing to show you how more modern man has applied those concepts.
And that's the amazing thing about Freemasonry and about the Scottish Rite as part of Freemasonry is these continuities, these strings of teachings that don't change, and at the same time the fact that the fraternity is constantly adapting itself to the society around it.
In 2003, the late Lee Sherman Dreyfus, former governor of Wisconsin and himself a Scottish Rite Mason, spoke of how the ideals of Freemasonry inspire the best in men, whatever the period, whatever the challenge.
There have been 6, in my opinion, 6 great true revolutions in the 17th and 18th century. What do I mean by a great and true revolution? A revolution that was not aimed at taking power. It was a revolution aimed at giving power to the people. And there were only 6 of those. One was obviously here in America. One was in France. One was in Italy. One was in Hungary. One was in South America. And one was in Mexico. Now, who were the leaders of those 6 great revolutions that brought power to the common people? Obviously, George Washington in this one. And in France, it was Danton. In Italy, it was Garibaldi. And in South America was Simón Bolívar. Mexico, Benito Juárez. And in Hungary, Kossuth. All of those men, Freemasons, all of them. Is that just chance? Is that just the luck of the dice? I don't think so. I look at World War II, and for those of you as our guests tonight, who are the names you associate with bringing about the successful conclusion of that war? You've got to start with Churchill and Roosevelt, no question about those two, and followed by Harry Truman, and certainly General Marshall and the Truman or Marshall Plan that followed after the war that preserved that peace. And you've got to look at Douglas MacArthur out in the Pacific and what he did in laying a constitution and creating a democracy in Japan from a nation that had been a warrior nation. Now, am I to tell you that most of those men are Masons? No. All of those men were Freemasons. But I think this current century, the one that I'm going to miss, is very promising because there's a possibility of a quantum leap to build the world's royal arch. It'll cover all of the peoples, all of the religions, all of the races of this world, to understand that we are all brothers and sisters and that we are under one fatherhood. It is possible a world of no war, of religious tolerance, of racial tolerance, with food, shelter, and security for everybody in the world, and a brotherhood of mankind. So for those of you now who are my brothers in this hall, I tell you, this is no time for any of you, regardless of your age, to say it is high 12 and there is no work before us. He has put a good deal of work on that trestle board, and let us get to our labors and finish building the temple. There's an incredible opportunity.
Scottish Rite Freemasons of the Northern Jurisdiction are committed to improving the futures of both children and adults. In 1934, the Scottish Rite established the Benevolent Foundation for funding research to find a cure for schizophrenia, the debilitating mental illness that often strikes people in their youth. Through their efforts, Scottish Rite Masons continue to bring hope to all who suffer from the devastating effects of schizophrenia. In 1932, Leon M. Abbott started a fund that now provides hundreds of scholarships to the children and grandchildren of Scottish Rite Masons, as well as to members of the fraternity's youth groups.
Well, the Scottish Rite Masons helping me out is exactly what I want to do when I'm older. You know, I want to emulate that. I like to be able to give to people that are up and coming and, you know, need a little financial aid like I did, you know, like my parents do.
In September of 1994, Scottish Rite Masons adopted as a major philanthropy learning centers for children with dyslexia.
Now who wants to read next? Stephanie.
So it went on.
These children have the ability and desire to learn, but they often find that reading, writing, and spelling are painful and demoralizing.
He had low self-esteem. He hated school. Just his attitude was horrendous. It's like somebody just took the worst part of my life, the biggest problem I've ever had in my whole entire life, and washed it away. I have my son back.
In the 1970s, to commemorate our nation's bicentennial, Scottish Rite Masons built the National Heritage Museum in Lexington, Massachusetts. Its cornerstone exhibit is Sowing the Seeds of Liberty, which tells the stories of ordinary people who played extraordinary roles in the American colonists' resistance to British rule.
Being able to partake in an exhibit like this strengthens one's belief in the very basic freedoms that we do have in this country.
In addition to its lively exhibits about our country's history and culture, the museum also houses an important library of Masonic documents and a fascinating collection of fraternal artifacts.
The National Heritage Museum offers a wonderful opportunity for the general public to come to see and understand and appreciate the wonderful art and culture and history of American Masonry.
The National Heritage Museum puts into action many of the Scottish Rites values: love of country, improvement of the mind, and above all, the desire to inspire its visitors with stories of our nation's past and present. Members of the Scottish Rite understand that stewardship is a process, and often a lengthy one. Their commitment is not just to the next generation, but to all who succeed us. Ten years ago, Liza was having trouble in school. Liza was dyslexic. She had a learning disorder that affects as many as 1 out of 5 children.
In like 3rd grade, I think it would take me like hours to do all of my homework. And then I would have to have her sign notes saying that I didn't have enough time to finish everything. So it was difficult. I would always have to go the extra mile with my schoolwork.
It's very hard for anyone without dyslexia to understand how difficult it can be. The process of reading is complex. A lot can go wrong. A dyslexic child has difficulty with the process of decoding words. Imagine, for example, if you had to decode a sentence that looked like this. Liza's parents heard about a new dyslexia treatment program in their city, the Scottish Rite Learning Center.
Yeah, I remember those. When I used to go there, we used to get a big sand tray out and then draw each letter and then say how it sounds when you would be saying it, and that would just enforce how you're supposed to say it.
In 1994, the first learning center opened in Massachusetts. Now, centers are open in the 15 states of the northern jurisdiction. There, children with dyslexia receive tutoring for free. More than 5,000 children have passed through the learning centers. Every day, their lives are changing for the better.
There is a mystery.
I didn't envision her going to Chicago when she was 10. I didn't think that would ever happen. She really has confidence.
At DePaul University, I am a business major. Right now, I think I'm going to do a major in marketing and a concentration in sales and leadership.
It's just amazing that thousands of children are being taught at no charge. This is mind-boggling to many people when they hear that Scottish Rite is funding this training for children without any expense at all to the parents. In my 50 years in this field, I know of no one else who has ever offered free tutoring for children. It's amazing.
The Learning Centers program is accredited by the premier organization in the field of dyslexia education, the International Multisensory Learning Education Council.
I think that the Scottish Rite program is absolutely superb.
I am so grateful of the Learning Center and the opportunity that Liza had.
So each day is like a new journey, and using my knowledge and the things that I've learned, I think is the best way to thank them.
It is stories like Liza's, multiplied thousands of times, that keep Scottish Rite Masons so committed to the learning centers.
I knew I liked riding motorcycles, and I said, well, why don't we start a motorcycle club whose sole purpose is to raise funds to help children?
For me, it's a sense of pride. It's a sense of satisfaction. The children, I mean, that's our whole goal, the children.
A fundamental tenet of the Scottish Rite is education. Masons think a lot about light. I've spent most of my career studying the science of light. Light is synonymous with knowledge. We're promoting knowledge, and this enables children at a very early age to mature, blossom, and be productive.